This didn't need to happen. The Rams should have beaten the Dolphins. What's next for the Rams? Can they still make the playoffs? We're breaking it all down on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Head to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation, the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's in his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. On today's episode, breaking down the Rams' disappointing Monday Night Football loss. What's next for the Rams? Can they still make the playoffs? We're going to break it all down. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. All right, Travis. So an extremely disappointing loss for the Rams on Monday Night Football. You had a chance to extend that winning streak to 4 games, to go over 500. Instead, the Rams offense completely let the defense down. The defense really came to play. They gave this offense a chance to win. You come up with some big stops, get some turnovers, but the Rams, they couldn't even get in the end zone. The first time all season, they don't score a touchdown. Only the second time with Matthew Stafford as their quarterback that he doesn't throw a touchdown. You had miscues all night. Interception by Stafford. You had a Kyren Williams fumble. You had Kyren Williams sticking his finger in the ear holes of Dolphins players. You had a bad false start by Bo Limmer that made a 52-yarder in the third quarter that Josh McCarty would have made to a 57-yarder that ended up in a miss. Just not a good job by this Rams. I love Sean McVay not going for it on a 4th down. We'll talk about that late in the game too. But yeah, it was a major missed opportunity that could honestly but really prove major when it comes to the Rams' playoff chances.
Yeah, but before we get to that, Doug, I want to do a little bit of positive because there isn't a ton of positive to talk about that game last night. A lot of fans of Locked On Rams, a lot of everydayers coming out to both the pregame and the postgame show. So thumbs up to everybody that stopped by and said, what's up? Really deeply appreciate that. There was Z, there was Juan, there was David, and many, many more. So shout out to all the everydayers out there that listen to this. So good job by you guys. Thank you for coming by and saying hello. And if you're at a Rams game or at a postgame show, please come by and do that. There's the good news. Here's the other stuff. That was a really rough night for Rams fans. That was a poor performance by the offense, about as poor a performance as I think that we've seen this team put together when they had the majority of their weapons. We've seen some rough nights. You go back a few years when they were in Chicago and they couldn't get anything done. It was freezing cold, but there were at least kind of some understandings and some explanations as to why it wasn't working. Not so much last night. You know, you had more or less your full offensive line minus Rob Havenstein, some guys that were back, like you mentioned, Doug, some key penalties, some very bizarre decision-making as far as Sean McVay goes. And what really is disappointing about the whole thing is that the defense feels like it's starting to round into shape a little bit. I mean, Tyreek Hill was a non-factor in that game last night. That was very, very exciting for the Rams defense to be able to do what they did. But the offense was just, there's no other word for it. The offense was bad. The offense was flat. The offense was undynamic. There was nothing about what you saw on that side of the football that was very exciting. We can continue to kind of get into it specifically, but just generally speaking, I think that I guess if you're looking for some positivity, I don't think the team is as bad as it looked. I don't know if the team is as good as it looked against, maybe a Minnesota or some other games. I think this is going to be a slog for this team. I think they're right about a 500 team. They're going to have to be a little bit better than that to get into the playoffs. And it's going to come right down to the wire. And games like last night might be the reason that you miss.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think early on, it was a story of the Rams just not taking advantage of big plays. I mean, it's a 10-0 game early. Christian Roseboom picks off Tua in the second quarter. The Rams then down 10-0 at that point. That to me was like, okay, it's on. The Rams got off to a slow start. They're going to punch it in, and they're going to take control of this game. And then what happens? Kyren Williams fumbled on the very next play. The very next play, Kyren Williams fumbles. I mean, these are really inexcusable mistakes for a team if they're serious about making the playoffs. You had an extra day to prepare, and the offense comes out flat like that, and the defense is 2 turnovers, 2 sacks, really showing a lot of toughness there, getting to the quarterback, causing pressure. And I think, too, Travis, I mean, look, the big talk heading into this one was you get Jonah Jackson back. You're getting Steve Avila back, right? And you're hoping to get what was close to that offensive line minus Rob Havenstein, and they just didn't do a fantastic job. Joe Noteboom, he was a turnstile all night, absolute bust of a contract, proves that once again, and you just didn't protect Matthew Stafford in certain spots where you needed to. And also, Jonah Jackson didn't have a good night either. I mean, Jonah Jackson, at this point, he's a bust of a signing. So, look, it's just really a not good night for the Rams.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Go back to what you were talking about where Roseboom makes the nice play. And by the way, not only a nice interception, a nice return of the interception. And they had to go back to about midfield anyway because there was a penalty on the return. Now, it was a little bit of a ticky-tack kind of thing. Braden Fisk got hit with an illegal block. But again, what was an opportunity became less of an opportunity. You talk about Kyren Williams fumbles the ball right away. The Rams took it right back. Jared Verse knocked it out of Tua Tagovailoa's hands. He recovered the ball. And they still didn't get a touchdown. They had 2 turnovers on their side of the field, and they walked away from it with 3 points. You have to do more than that. That's not what they were able to do. You mentioned Matthew Stafford didn't have time. He did not have time. But when he did have time, he still wasn't very good. There really wasn't any time offensively that you saw them playing last night where you felt like they were getting close, where it felt like they had started to click. They struggled in the red zone, which has kind of been the bugaboo of this team for this season. This is going to be a challenge. Their chances to make the playoffs took a serious hit. I was looking at some numbers this morning on ESPN. Their chances to make the playoffs are under 10% right now. You're going to have to find some wins against some teams in Philadelphia, Buffalo, and San Francisco that may be a little bit harder in competition than what you saw last night. Not that you can't do it, but it's going to be much more challenging along the way. And, it's games like this. It's games like the Bears earlier in the season. You have to win these games if you want to be a playoff team. They dropped both of those, and now you're going to have to find some wins in some much more difficult places.
Yeah, anytime you suffer a loss like that at home to a 2-6 team, there's going to be a lot of finger pointing, a lot of areas where you can kind of place blame. I mean, yeah, Joe Noteboom at 21.8 pass blocking grade, Jonah Jackson 28.6 pass blocking grade. But you're absolutely right, is that was not a good Matthew Stafford game. And really, the play that stands out late in the fourth quarter, just over 6 minutes to play on 3rd and goal, he had Kyren Williams wide open in the underneath pass. He could hit him. He could walk into the end zone, and you score there, and you could potentially cut it to 4 with over 6 minutes to play. And you saw the camera go to Stafford. He had that look in his eyes. He knew right away that he missed him in that situation. And then on top of that, I mean, just not going to Demarcus Robinson enough, right? Not going to a guy that had 4 touchdowns the last 2 games. And I think that for him, it feels like you don't have that safety valve in Tyler Higbee. Feels like he's missed as well. But yeah, Matthew Stafford was not sharp. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the Rams not going for it on 4th and goal late. Was that the right decision or the wrong decision for Sean McVay? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
All right, Rams fans, remember our incredible partner, Ultimate Pro Football GM? Well, they are back, and they've added an amazing new game mode that you need to hear about. The game that has you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory now has a head coach career mode. So, on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, hiring a coaching staff, now you also get to call offensive plays during games as well. Additionally, you'll dig the new tools that you can work with, such as individual training camps, upgraded negotiation systems. So this game is realistic, it is incredibly fun, and it just got even better. So if you've already had it installed, be sure to update so you can try out the new mode. If you don't have it, download it right now. It's a must-have for all football fans. I know that you're absolutely going to love it. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free. It has no ads, and it's 100% playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. And here's a special offer for Locked On Rams fans. Use the promo code Locked On NFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you'll want in creating a dynasty. So download the game. You visit ultimate-gm.com. That's ultimate-gm.com, or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today. And after you're done with that, why not play a little FanDuel, right? You know FanDuel. We've talked about FanDuel for so long. Such a great partner here at Locked On Rams. Why not get ready for all of your NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook? Because right now, new customers, good news for you. You can get $5 bet, get you 150 in bonus bets if you hit that $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need right in one place to live bet on the NFL on one spot. Of course, the FanDuel Sports app. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you check out your team's stats, you can view live play-by-play, and of course, so much more on the same page where you place your bets. But you got to go to FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. And you can join that Everyday Listeners Club too. That way you can go up to Travis before and after games, go say what's up, like always. And you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. All right, Travis, here in our second segment, talk about that critical part of the game where the Rams had an opportunity to really get back into this one. It felt like the typical Rams thing this year where you saw some ugly football at times, but they were just going to find a way because of the sheer talent of Matthew Stafford and play calling of Sean McVay. They were going to gut it out, or at the very least, just make it a much more interesting game. Yeah. It was the fourth quarter. 4th and goal at the 4-yard line, 6:34 left in the game. Rams down 20-9 at all 3 timeouts, and the field goal makes it an 8-point game. A touchdown, though, you put yourself in a position where you really put a lot of pressure on them, and also would have increased their win probability. If they went for it, their win probability would have gone up a few points. They decided to kick the field goal, and ultimately they lose the game. But thoughts on the decision? For me, I think the way that the defense had been playing, the way the offense was just not getting in the end zone all night, I'm going for in that situation.
Yeah, I kind of feel the opposite, Doug. I think because the offense was so bad that there was no confidence that you were going to find a play that was going to work. Like if this were a typical Rams game where Matthew Stafford is feeling it, Sean McVay is kind of, calling a really solid game offensively as far as the plays go, then I think that you're in your rhythm, you have a chance. The Rams had no rhythm all night long. If you go for it there and don't succeed, the game's probably over. If you kick the field goal there, you still have a chance to kind of maybe get another touchdown. There's still plenty of time. You're going to have another possession left. So I didn't have too big of a problem with that one. I thought the one for me that was particularly curious was right at the end of the game where they decided to kick the field goal on 3rd down. That's the one that made me kind of scratch my head a little bit, because you're at about 45 seconds or so and you kick it on 3rd down why not take one more shot at the end zone? You still need a touchdown at this point. You need both of these. Your best chance at a touchdown, I think they're on the 12-yard line at the point, is probably right there. You can still kick the field goal afterwards. It's only going to cost you maybe 6 or 7 seconds of clock time along the way. So that was the one for me that kind of stood out as a head scratcher. I just don't understand why they decided to kick it there on 3rd down, knowing you still needed to score a touchdown. The decision to kick it on 4th down earlier in the fourth quarter was one that made a little bit more sense to me.
I just think, look, you get a touchdown there, you make it a 2016 game, and then
they hadn't come close to scoring a touchdown all night. To think that you're just going to get, if you go for it, you get it. I think the chances of going for it and getting nothing were far greater than going for it and having and succeeding.
I agree. I mean, it's a little hindsight, hyena Monday morning quarterback for sure. But in that scenario, when the Dolphins get the ball back and you get a field goal, you make it a 2-possession game, like what it ended up happening, just feels like, look, how about this? Easy solution is you hit a wide open Kyle Williams underneath because you're supposed to be a Hall of Fame quarterback that is one of the highest paid in the game, supposed to be top 5 in just Monday Night Football. I think that would have solved a lot of their problems. But yeah, I mean, Sean McVay did talk about it after the game, the decision. He said, I did it, but because it was a 2-possession game and what had occurred, felt like kick it anyway. Felt like the defense was playing really well right there, but because of just the flow of the overall game, that was what was resulted in keeping it to a 1-possession game. So, yeah, I mean, you're right.
That's the part to me, Doug, that I think needs to be factored in. The flow of the game, to use Sean McVay's words right there. The Rams' offense was nothing last night. The Rams' offense was bad, and they'd been trying to find some sort of thing. They just couldn't get anything going. I think at that point you had to get points. You had to go from there. But, that's not why they lost the game. They lost the game because they couldn't block anybody up front. They lost the game because you're not going to win any NFL games if you don't score touchdowns. This was a really rough night for them offensively. The defense pretty good. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point, but this was a very tough loss and one that puts them in a very challenging position.
It absolutely does. And we'll talk about the defense. I mean, the defense definitely stepped up in a big way. I will say, though, I mean, that was kind of one of my concerns, too, as far as trying to be bold. I mean, this team really, a couple of weeks ago, looked like their season was over, and they're playing the fourth quarter strategically like they were the favorites heading into the season to win the Super Bowl. That's why I was saying, why not roll the dice and get crazy with it and make this thing weird? Because the defense, I mean, at some point, they were going to falter. As great as Jared Verse was, and Jared Verse, to me, he profiles the potential perennial All-Pro. I mean, the missed tackle on Tua that led to that 25-yard reception by Raheem Mostert on 3rd and 19 in the fourth quarter. That's a back-breaking play, and you have to find a way to make that tackle. As great as Jared Verse is, I mean, if he's making a list on how to get better, he's got to make those tackles in spaces. And at some point, as great as your defense was playing, the Dolphins, they weren't great, but they answered the bell every time they needed to, and the defense just didn't get that key stop late to prevent them from hitting that field goal.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. That 3rd and 19 play that you just mentioned was, I think, the play of the game, because once they went down there and got more points, you knew that the Rams were really behind the 8 ball at that point, that they're going to have to score 2 more times after that. Like to your point, Jared Verse is very likely to win the Defensive Player of the Year. I agree with you. I think he's probably looking at Pro Bowls in his career over the course of however many years he's in this league. So he's a fantastic player, but that was a big miss. That was a very big miss. It's kind of the opposite of what we've seen for a long time, where the offense just you're asking so much of them to keep you in the game that when they do falter, it's like, oh man, there it is. But this was the opposite of that. The defense, I thought, was really good all night, but I agree with you. That miss on 3rd and 19 was a big one, and that was the time where you're like, all right, it ain't gonna happen tonight.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I mean, that definitely was the feeling I got. It was kind of one of those games like, oh, this is just not the Rams' night. Now, why was that? We're breaking it down on this show. But
let me ask you this, Doug. Was there at any point in that game, because we've seen the Rams look kind of choppy at different points, and the first half I thought was interesting because they did not look good at all, but they go into halftime, it's 10-6, they're trailing, and it's like, all right, they're going to figure it out, and they're going to score some touchdowns in the second half. But they never really looked like they had figured it out in the second half. That there was never a point in that game, especially after the opening drive of the third quarter, false start, bad snap, all that stuff that kind of made Josh Carty have to try a nearly 60-yard field goal. At that point, you're like, this just does not feel like a game they're going to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, you mentioned it, the red zone issues. I mean, that continues to haunt them all year. They go 0-3 in the red zone. And even just getting on that half of the field, things just didn't go their way. But, I mean, they still managed to make it a close game by the end of the first half. I mean, when I saw Joshua Carty hit a 55-yard field goal, I mean, I think at that point I say, okay, I mean, that's the best drive of the first half. You go 54 yards in 11 plays in 2:13. You're within 4. You feel pretty good about your chances in the second half, considering the adjustments, and you're at home, and you think, okay, this malaise that they're going through in the first half is going to wear off, but it just didn't happen. It was just way too many mistakes. By the way, I saw Rams fans out there crying about, oh, why isn't Bo Limmer in center? And look, I definitely want to see Bo Limmer at center, right? Especially because of the cohesion they had built. But Bo Limmer also had the false start that pushed it back to a 57-yarder that, yes, it's a special teams play, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you can really point to so many areas that led to this loss.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's not one person at fault for the way that offense performed last night. That being said, I'll make a prediction right now. Bo Limmer is your starting center in New England on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I think that's almost a guarantee at this point. Listening to Sean McVay after the game, you could tell it was very un-Sean McVay-like, the commentary that he had. It was not a lot of, I got to do better, I got to put us in a better position. It was they need to play better and execute what they've been given. That is a very different tenor from Sean McVay.
Yeah, give me more of that Sean McVay. It wasn't, I got to find a way to put this in better positions to have success. And it was, hey, offensive line, get your you-know-what together.
Yep.
And I really like that version of Sean McVay. But coming up next, we're going to continue to break down this one, talk about some positives, but also talk about a rookie that I thought should have gotten more opportunities. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
All right, let's talk about Gametime. D-Mac, put the Gametime app on your phone. What's better than going to a game? You know what's kind of fun about a basketball game in particular? There's a lot of just energy in the building. There's a lot of, here in Los Angeles at least, especially with a Laker game, there are celebrity sightings all over the place. You can't turn around and not see somebody you don't recognize from TV or the movies or music or whatever. And now here in LA too, you got the Clippers with that brand new building. It's pretty sweet. You got to go check that out. But you can't go if you don't have a ticket, and that's where Gametime comes in, right? Gametime allows you to get your tickets in the best spot, especially when we're talking about last-minute tickets, right? It's a great way if you're waiting to that last minute, maybe you're a little bit of a procrastinator like me, and you can get it done. Boom, right there. Plus, of course, they got seat views, all-in pricing, lowest price guarantee, Gametime ticket coverage, all of the bells and whistles that you're expecting. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. It's a great night out. Hockey, too. That's always a great night, too. There's plenty to do here in LA. There's concerts, comedy, everything you can think of, but you can't do it without Gametime. So download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. By the way, Travis, I really didn't like losing in front of Aaron Donald. I just want to point that out. You got AD back. Right. I mean, come on now. By the way, a lot of celebrities. I didn't want to lose in front of Mookie Betts, who was there celebrating. You had LeBron James at the game. I'm surprised LeBron didn't force the Rams to make Bronny like a starting receiver or something like that. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about that AD in the house?
It was the loudest cheer of the night. I can tell you that. I mean, and it wasn't close. All right, they went from AD in the play, and AD was awesome. He's hyped up. He had kind of the flex, the Hulk thing that he does, and it was great. And then they cut to LeBron, and it was.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of energy to see LeBron James there. And again, I get it. By the way, they did kind of a bad deal. Don't show him after AD. Don't show him after.
Yeah. They did him really dirty with that one. But if that's shown Mookie after AD,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure Mookie's getting cheers.
I didn't see Mookie. I'll be honest. I don't know where I was looking.
He was that standing area place, where they put the celebs
kind
of on the field.
I didn't see him on the big screen. I didn't see him last night, so I don't know. But look, the Dodgers are going to get an ovation, especially Mookie Betts, for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I was actually, when I saw Mookie, I was like almost hoping. I was like, oh, please, hopefully Travis doesn't see Mookie, because I know he's going through his baseball withdrawals, and it wouldn't help that.
I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about the offseason, and I'm fully versed in Roki Sasaki when anybody's ready to break it down.
There you go. Oh, here, I'll give you my worst example of the baseball withdrawals for the Dolphins Rams crossover episode.
Yes.
For the thumbnail, I put Rams versus Marlins preview. So we're all going through it. But here in our third segment, one thing I kind of just want to touch on. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kobe Turner, by the way, got to give him a lot of credit. He looked virtually unblockable at times.
Yeah.
He gets home and he was fantastic. But one thing that really stood out to me as far as the rookies and second year takes is, look, Blake Corum, right when he was starting to get a rhythm, providing this offensive spark, he was gone. I mean, you had him there in the third series, and he had a 4-yard run that was called back due to illegal formation. That was against Alaric Jackson. And he had some plays there, but really, without the penalties, you're looking at almost 20 yards on just 4 touches, 19 yards on 4 touches, and averaging 5 yards per play. And yeah, I mean, it's just interesting to see the whole Corm situation. So you pick him up in the third round to provide a spark, and when he does get some momentum, you take him off the field.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know why he doesn't play more. This is one of these things where I'm just going to have to trust the fact that I believe Sean McVay is putting his best hand forward. I trust that Sean McVay knows his personnel better than anyone on earth, that Sean McVay knows what he wants to get done better than anyone else, that there must be something about Blake Corum that you aren't seeing, that I'm not seeing, that a lot of people aren't seeing, that maybe he's not bringing to. I don't know what it is, Doug. I've been looking. I can't quite put my finger on it either. When we've seen him play, he looks like he's a pretty impactful player. As you mentioned, they spent a high draft pick to bring Blake Corum to the Los Angeles Rams. So obviously they have plans for him as a member of this team moving forward. But, you know, we'll see what happens next. New England is up. I expect them to win that game. I expect them to get back to 500. I expect them to hang around that 500 number for a while. So I don't know if you start seeing what you have at any point in this season. I don't think that's what this year is going to turn into. I think you're going to be in it right up until the very end. I hope so. And maybe Blake Corum is a play beyond that. But I'm with you. I would like to see more of him, and I can't tell you why we're not.
Yeah, and you look at that possession after the penalty, it leads to the deflected Matthew Stafford interception. We don't even see him again for the rest of the game. So, yeah, I agree with you that this team, they're not done yet. They still have a lot of talent, I think. Now we kind of know Rob Havenstein.
Weird too, you know, like because New England is not a good team. You're back to 500. Philadelphia is a pretty good team. You're probably
getting better though.
And then you go. They have been getting better. Then you got New Orleans, so you're back to 500. And then you've got Buffalo, and you're back under. And then you get the Jets, and you're back at it. I just think you're going to get this right around 500. We'll see what the rest of the NFC West looks like. I think maybe Arizona gets to 11, looking at their schedule. So that feels like a tough putt at this point. And I don't know if 9 wins get you in as a wild card team in the NFC this year. So they're going to have to grab a win from somebody that at least on paper looks like it might be a challenge.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where to make up for this one, you got to win a game that you weren't supposed to win type thing down the stretch. And this team is certainly capable of doing that. By the way, my Drake May is going to be better than Caleb Williams take is definitely starting to age better. When I say I made that take, I mean like in a group chat with like USC friends. I don't like it wasn't on a show that or anything like that. But still, and it's
Blake. I should say Caleb Williams got Shane Waldron shown the door today, so they're already shaking it up in Chicago. Eberflus is probably hearing a clock tick pretty loudly in his future. So you know that's one of the good things, at least for the Rams at the moment. They don't have to worry about the quarterback. They have that, despite a pretty rough game from Matthew Stafford last night. At least they have that box checked.
Yeah. By the way, I love how that ESPN radio guy in Chicago, I don't know if you saw that when he had Matt Eberflus on and the call dropped and he said, "Coach, your cell phone is as bad as the offense right now." So shout out to ESPN radio Chicago. That was pretty awesome right there.
Good line.
Look, Rams season isn't done. Very frustrating loss. We'll continue to break this one down all week. That's going to over this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.